Hi and welcome to another Checiegirl Creations DIY video. Today I'll be showing you how to make this Valentine's Day card. And I'll be doing stamping, a bit of blending, some embossing and die cutting. And this is on some craft card. It came in this pack. And you can find out more about some of the things in this video in my birthday haul. And it's 5x7 card blanks. And they come flat, so I just have to score them. So I've already scored this one. And I just used this bone folder. I got this for Christmas in a 2-pack. And it comes from Hobbycraft. So the first thing I'm going to do is make the jar, and I'm going to use some 200 GSM cardstock from Poundland, and it comes in a 30 sheet pack. And I'm using this stamp. I got this from Michael's on my trip to America last year, February. And I'll just be using this dye ink pad, jet black. And to make sure I get a nice clean impression and crisp impression, and make sure that everything is really well inked. And if you get anything on the inner edges, just wipe that off. Just in case you rock the stamp, you don't want any impressions there. And I'm putting it pretty close to the edge of the cardstock. And then I just press really hard. And I keep it on the cardstock for quite a while so that the ink can transfer onto the card. And there you have a really good impression. And then just make sure and clean your stamp off before going on. And because this is a dye ink, just want this to dry a little bit before we go and stamp with the hearts. And I'm just using a damp rag to clean off the stamp. So for the hearts, I'm using this foam stamp. I just had some foam shapes and I stuck two together. Then I put some double-sided tape on it and attached it to this stamp pad cover. And I'll also be using a heart from this Daisy and Dandelion stamp set. It's called Candy Floss and Marshmallow. So I'll be using this heart. And this heart from Clearly Besotted, and the stamp set name is called Key to My Heart. So I'll be using quite a few different colours, shades of pink actually, shades of pink. So it's quite a light one, this one's kind of in the middle, this is a more kind of earthy pink, and this is a pinky red. So first I'm going to start off with the big heart. And you want to start with your bigger stamps first. I'm going this large heart, the medium heart, and then the tiny heart to fill in any gaps. And I'm placing the heart so that it fills up most of the edge, but I still don't want to go over the edge. And this is the foam stamp, and it stamps really nicely. It stamps, and I'm not wiping off my stamp. I'm just going to move on to the next colour. You can always have a scrap piece of paper so that you can stamp on it to see if you want to use that colour next. And you want to turn your stamp so that it doesn't all look the same, so you're still using the same stamp, but turning it kind of gives it quite a nice look. And then that's it for the big hearts. And then you can just use the same damp rag to wipe off the foam, and it'll be nice and clean, and just stamp off a few times just to make sure that all the ink's being removed before putting it aside. And the foam tends to hold the ink quite a lot, so you have to give it a few wipes and a few stamps just to make sure it's all removed. So now I'm going to use the medium stamp, and this I'm going to use more than the bigger ones. The big ones I've only done 3, and I've done that on all the cards. And you can see as we go along that there's quite a few blank patches, but don't worry about that because we'll fill those in with the little stamp. Right, so I'm happy with the amount of medium hearts, and I've kind of gone up 2 levels, if you want to be kind of exact. So now I'm going to use the smaller ones, and also don't forget to clean off your stamp, especially since these aren't permanent. You don't say you want to go into yellow and then make that stamp pad more orange than yellow. And you see I'm just going over a lot of my stamps and filling in gaps. Right, so all the stamping's done. So I'm just going to give it a quick blast with the heat gun. So I'll be using the Checiegirl Big Shot with this die. It's MNC Boutique, and these are from the works. I'll be using this die, and if you don't have a die like this, you can always use, say, a ribbon or something, just something to give an effect like it's on a table. It could be lace, anything really. See, now it's all clear. And this is a really beautiful die. It's really nice and dainty. And then you can just poke out the pieces of paper from the die. Right, so I'm going to cut out the vase. Not the vase, sorry, the jar. And it's quite a simple shape, and especially when you're going around this bit, the trick is to move the paper, not the scissors, and go nice and slow. So now that everything's cut out, I can now ink the sides a bit with my Stays On ink pad. It's jet black as well, because there's a bit of a white edge. And to give it that kind of blue tint, to make it look a bit more like a glass jar, I'm using this stamp pad and this sponge. And this sponge I cut from a sponge that was in a pencil case I got for Christmas. It was something that was put there to keep its shape, and this is really good for inking, though the sponge is getting quite damaged, and you'll see why, because of the way I'm inking. And I'm going heavier on the edges and lighter on in the middle. Without adding any more ink to the sponge, I'm just going in the middle just to blend everything in. And then it just looks different pretty much straight afterwards. And I'm just going to give my fingers a bit of a wipe with a damp rag because I don't want to smudge anything else. Then I'm going to heat this up just to make sure everything's dry. And now I'm going to use this Uniball Signal pen, it's a gel pen, to add highlights. So just putting it where the light would hit it. and because most of the highlights are more on the right side, it means that the sun is coming from over here. And for some reason, the gel pen doesn't seem to want to go nice and smoothly. I think it's because of all the ink on it. And because these are like sweets in a jar, I add some highlights to some of the hearts as well. And there it looks just that little bit better. So I'm going to put that aside now and sort out where I want this. So I'm using my stamp tool, and I made this using a tutorial on YouTube. It's a DIY misti stamping tool basically. I'm sorry for the creaking, the hinges quite squeaky. And I put 2 marks on the grid when I was making the card, and I want it 8 centimeters up. And to make sure that I don't put glue where I don't want it, since this is coming off of the card, I just use some masking tape. I'm just using this to hold it down. Ooh. I've also destickified the masking tape on my trousers so that it doesn't rip the paper. So now that I know where I'm not supposed to put glue, I'm going to use some tacky glue. I'm not sure where I got this from. Everything's been rubbed off of the bottle. And it works really well, so you don't want to put too much because it might squeeze out this on the sides. But you still want to put enough that it won't move. Right, so now that the card's in the right place, I'm going to take off the masking tape so I can see what I'm doing a bit more. So just press it down. If you can see any glue coming off from the edges, just wipe that off. And then I'm just using an acrylic stamping block to hold that down when it's drying. So now I'm going to keep the stamping tool here because I want to stamp the sentiment on the jar. So I'm just lining it up, and I've used this technique where I've taped out an area where I want the jar to be, or whatever I'm stamping, and you can see where I've used that technique in my last video making some other Valentine cards. And I'm taping it down so that it doesn't move. And for the sentiment, I'm using, it's a stamp set from Penny Black, and it's called From the Heart. It's a clear stamp set, and I'm using the sentiment of Valentine Wish. And using this tool, you can stamp a number of times in the same place without having to worry. And I'm using the same dye ink pad, which is jet black. So this is a Dovecraft Premium embossing stamp pad, and it's clear. Then I'm using some Paper Mania embossing powder, clear as well. But before I stamp, I'm just going to go over with my DIY anti-static pouch. And this is just basically a piece of fabric and with baby powder in it. So I'm also using this clear weight tray. It's by Anita's, and this is just good to catch any embossing powder to make sure I don't make a big mess, because embossing powder can get everywhere. And when I was making more than one at the same time, I stamped and embossed at the same time, and because once you have the powder on there, you don't have to heat it straight away. I didn't have to worry, so I just embossed them all at the same time. Okay, so when you're embossing, you want your heat gun to heat up beforehand, so that when you put it onto your piece, it embosses instantly. So now that it's embossed, and I left a few pieces of embossing powder around the sentiment on purpose, because it kind of gives that shimmer. You can't see it on camera, but then it just looks a bit more like glass. So now I can add foam squares, because I want to have a little bit of dimension on the card. So I'm using two sizes, these square ones and these rectangle ones. Right, so I'm sticking this on pretty straight and as central as possible, and I'm using the pattern on this die cut to guide me. And only press where there's foam squares, because you don't want to dent it. And you also want to be mindful of how much you put on, so that if it posts, it doesn't warp. And there you have it. And these were pretty easy to put together. They're really simple, and they all have a really nice feel to them. It's quite dainty. My other Valentine's cards won't like that, so it kind of caters to everybody. So I hope you liked the video, and if you do make a card like this, I would love to see it. You can post it on Instagram and tag me to it, or Google+. I'm on Google+ as well. You can even send me a picture. I would love to see them. So thank you for watching, and please join me again on another arty adventure. Bye!